I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're listening to Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the sins of the underworld. We're Ireland's top podcast for 2025, and now we've got a new website. So if you want to learn more about crime and criminals, if you want stories, extras, and podcast subscriber specials, go to www.crimeworld.com.
So it's been another massive year for Crime World. Now, obviously, the main star of the show is not here to review it, Eimear, and I'm not suggesting you're a poor replacement, but
it wouldn't be the first time you said that to me.
No,
it's the first time on camera, but many times.
I said I'm not suggesting that. But obviously, Nicola will be back next year. But we're going to look at some of the, I suppose, how many people listened to Crime World last year? Do you know? How many listens were there?
Oh, I don't know. Don't put me on the spot. Do you know?
I do.
You're reading off the screen?
No, I am. But it was about 30 million listens last year, which is incredible.
Yeah.
But people listen to it in two ways. Obviously, the biggest listens come from the audio, people listening on their phones.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, YouTube as well there was about 11 million watches on YouTube, so 11 out of 30 million. And there's different audiences on both. So I thought we'd look at the top 5 on each of the platforms.
Okay.
So coming in the top 5 was on ACAST, what people are listening to, was Conor McGregor's bid to introduce bombshell new evidence in the Nikita Hand civil rape case. So, I mean, it was obviously a huge story at the time, and the word bombshell is overused probably in news reports.
Yeah.
But it genuinely was this.
Yeah, no, it was. So, yeah, basically, McGregor, obviously, he appealed the original civil jury finding, which was that he had assaulted Nikita Hand in the Beacon Hotel in December 2018. And he wasn't happy with that, so he took it to the Court of Appeal. And we were expecting it, as you've said before, usually they're looking to they're looking to point to things that the judge said that they shouldn't have said and point to law, and that's what they usually appeal on. But he actually said that he had 2 new witnesses who came forward, basically had contacted him via his sister, I think, and basically said that they were living in a house across the road from Nikita Hand. Nikita Hand had went home on the night of the incident and was obviously had loads of bruises on her. And they claim, Samantha Riley, she claimed that from the upstairs window she could see Nikita Hand's then partner basically assaulting her, and they tried to suggest this is where the injuries came from. These were completely denied as lies by Nikita Hand, and ultimately
the reason the reason it was a bombshell was because obviously it had been an absolutely massive case that had been reported across the globe in like unprecedented ways. Rarely are those, in Ireland at least, have celebrities of, certainly Conor McGregor's the most famous person in Ireland without exception.
Yeah.
And rarely have they been sued in this manner. Now, there's been lots of rumours over the years, and we can remember loads of them.
Yeah.
So it was a huge case.
It was. But I suppose what was shocking is that, they described it as bombshell, but I suppose if it did get to go to an appeal court, it would be shocking because this wasn't, obviously that trial went on for weeks. It was last November and this wasn't brought up. So they claimed that they had only heard about it after the case, so they couldn't have used it in their original trial. But yeah, it was shocking claims. But ultimately on the day, another kind of shocking moment, I suppose, was on the day that the appeal was due to be heard, the Conor McGregor's legal team pulled it. So they didn't go ahead with that as part of the appeal.
So these things are genuinely unprecedented. So for a case like that, to lose that case, this would be new evidence.
Yeah.
And you're rarely allowed to introduce new evidence in an appeal. You basically appeal on points of law. Whatever's been heard is all that can be heard, but you can bring another perspective on it. So even that was a bombshell moment to try and introduce this new evidence. To have it withdrawn, I can't remember a case, certainly nothing like that of high profile nature. And then for it all to turn again in the court, and when the judge in question recommended the Gardaí launch an investigation into perjury, it really was kind of one of these sort of like I've just never seen the like of it, and it's it's only this year, but it has been, I suppose, in terms of social media and all that, probably the biggest story of the year.
And that couple have been arrested and questioned in relation to perjury, I think offences in relation to conspiracy to commit perjury. Now, I think that they've been released without charge, obviously, but it's still ongoing, that investigation, as far as we're aware.
Yeah, and of course, one of the other top 5 episodes was an episode called Conor McGregor and His New Friends. And that was about, I suppose, how Conor McGregor ended up in the White House, effectively.
Yeah.
And, obviously people, wasn't it Paddy's Day?
Yeah.
And he had kind of a personal audience with Donald Trump. Usually, we've all been reporting for years about tired-looking Taoiseach flying over with a bowl of shamrocks.
Yeah.
Another sort of boring, kind of bland statements about enduring friendship.
Yeah.
And Trump isn't bland. Whatever else you might think of him, you can never accuse him of being bland.
Yeah.
And instead, we saw the sight of Conor McGregor and Trump kind of grinning at the camera.
Yeah. I think Micheál Martin, I think, was there, but that was kind of it was totally trumped by, I think Conor McGregor was actually invited in on the day, wasn't he? And it was just the photos, I suppose, the perfect family photo. He had, obviously, Dee, who's now his wife, and the kids, and he was there with the shamrock. And I think that's what offended people a lot, because obviously you can have your opinion on McGregor, but people don't he always kind of really bigs up his Irishness, and a lot of people aren't necessarily proud that he's a fellow country person. So I think that's what really got a lot of people to graw.
Not everybody's.
Not everybody. No, I said
delighted.
people. I said people like. I did say some people like him, but I said there's a lot of people who, don't want him representing Ireland on the biggest Irish day of the year.
No, but we'll end the year with Conor McGregor still getting married and all of that being big news across the world. And whatever trials and tribulations he continues to continue on, as they say.
Yeah, well, I suppose it is the kind of the era of the Donald Trumps, so the really divisive characters, that people do they do make waves for that reason. So Conor McGregor is the ultimate divisive character, and in America, his controversies don't seem to get as much attention as they do here. So he is extremely famous and will continue to be. And we're at his wedding in Italy, and they seem to.
So Conor McGregor continues on. Number 2 and number 5. In the middle, we have at number 3, Kinahan, The True Story of Ireland's Mafia. Now, this is based on it was an interview with 2 journalists who'd work on a BBC programme, basically on the Kinahans for the BBC, Stephen Dempster and Tim Robinson. Really a really fantastic documentary, I have to say. Now, featured a lot of people like, the one that you're trying to replace there, that you're trying to take over of.
I think you're trying to replace her. How many episodes have you done since she's been away?
Well, look, you're the one trying to.
No, I'm happy. I can't wait for her to come back. I texted her yesterday and said Niall has lost the run of himself, and which is actually true.
Yeah. So anyway, you can continue your campaign, but obviously Nicola starred a lot in this documentary. But I tell you what was great about it, actually. While there was definitely new bits, and they had really interesting interviews with people, for example, that worked in the American security services, talking about how the FBI have an interest in the Kinahans. But it was just to tell that incredible tale, which is the rise of Christy Kinahan from a normal sort of middle-class-ish background in Cabra to being, the target for international police forces across the world.
Yeah, of course. And we know, obviously, we've launched Crime World now, and Christy Kinahan podcast that you and Nicola did has done particularly well for us. And even we put up a long read in relation to him as well. So people are just very interested, and that's continued up until. Yeah,
and of course, some of the Kinahan story has been told throughout the year.
Yeah.
We've seen a couple of factors of this story, I suppose. The first is obviously the extradition of Sean McGovern, which is a huge moment that also happened this year. Now, Sean McGovern he's been before the Special Criminal Court even last week, where a book of evidence, I think, was handed over. So that case kind of progresses, and it probably will progress pretty quickly. He was granted legal aid, but all of that is a very significant case coming before the courts, because we've heard McGovern described as being a sort of right-hand man of Daniel Kinahan.
Yeah.
Daniel Kinahan is still in Dubai. We've already been told that he's wanted in connection with the murder of Neddy Hutch in Dublin. And there is a separate investigation going on, in connection with the directing of a criminal organisation, basically the Kinahan cartel. So those things have happened in that, and they've played out to a degree in 2025. When Sean McGovern does come to trial, we'll have, we can only presume that a lot of the evidence will be to do with digital communications, and whether that point to Daniel Kinahan or not, well, we will find out.
Yeah, because he's accused of organising the murder of Niall Eimear, and that was actually in December. That was 2016 December. That was I remember that one. It was just a couple of days before Christmas. So yeah, and it's special criminal court, so there'll be a lot of evidence heard.
Yeah. Now, we're also seeing in recent weeks or in recent months how, the Kinahan cartel structure in Ireland is effectively dismantled. And we're seeing the rise of other criminal organisations. And obviously, the fact is that if as Sean McGovern's case comes closer and closer to being heard, you might even have Gerard Hutch running for office simultaneously.
Yeah, and I suppose, because if you revert back to what was a year and a half ago, when he was facing the murder trial in special criminal court for David Byrne, obviously in the Regency Hotel, and then he was sensationally acquitted. And since then, obviously he has been the subject of money laundering investigation in Spain, but other than that, he has been able to live his life and has nearly got elected, as we know, and is planning to run for the by-election seat. So yeah, it's interesting how fortunes sort of seem to have changed.
And may yet change again. Who can say?
You can know. Yeah, it's topsy-turvy world, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
So number 4 was on Acast, which would be the audio platforms, was called The Dodger, DJ Carey and the Great Betrayal. And it was an interview, and I'll apologise if I don't pronounce the name. Nicola spoke to journalist Eimear ní Bréanáin about her new book, new book, The Dodger. And of course, that book was published just as DJ Carey was sentenced for deception.
Yeah.
And there's been, again, it's one of these incredible rise and fall stories. I mean, DJ Carey, anybody with even a very passing knowledge of Gaelic games. I think actually it was in the Mail, I don't know if you saw the headline, the Maradona of hurling, he was described as, and that's not inaccurate.
No.
I mean, he was not just a great sort of hurler, but a legendary one.
Oh, really legendary? Yeah, just because him. I can think of very few hurlers or GA stars that would have had the same level of sort of adoration as he's had.
Yeah.
And it's extremely accessible. He won several All-Irelands, loads of All-Stars, but then went on to manage underage teams for Kilkenny and kind of had that sort of celebrity lifestyle. His first marriage broke up, and then he was in a relationship with
Sarah Newman.
So she was obviously famous at the time from being on Dragon's Den. She was a successful businesswoman, so they were kind of a socialite couple, and he just had that whole aura around him of being someone that people really revered.
Yes, and then to go from that to being somebody who pretended to have cancer in order to get money off people, and not even to feed some sort of gambling addiction or anything like that. This is the whole bizarre bit of the DJ Carey story. He's been convicted, he's in prison.
Yeah.
I mean, an incredible, obviously, fall from grace. But you never really fully get the sense of what his motivation was.
No, and I suppose we've heard, I suppose before this shocking story emerged, he had kind of gotten in the news for issues with his debt. He famously got a massive debt drawn right down with AIB. It was reduced to only €60,000, which a lot of people probably made people bitter because a lot of people struggled after with the recession. So he would have kind of been in the news for that, and it was kind of said in court that he did have a lot of debts to repay, but it doesn't really add up to explaining this, because this was a massive fraud, like massive.
Yeah, because of course the amount of money were huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one aspect of it.
Yeah.
People targeted included Dennis O'Brien, the billionaire. I mean, Dennis O'Brien, like, even just to target somebody like that, somebody who's a significantly powerful person.
Yeah, but it shows the reach of the GAA, and I know you kind of sometimes laugh at that, but like you'd be surprised at how these people are absolutely some of the stars, especially when they're playing.
I know, but I mean, just because a guy can whack a ball around with a stick doesn't mean you're going to give him 100 grand.
No, I'm not saying it's right, but do you think if he was an ordinary Joe, Dennis O'Brien, he'd be in Dennis O'Brien's orbit? Not at all, you know. So
I mean, and look, Dennis O'Brien, fair play to him, went to court and gave a victim impact statement,
and
subsequently gave a few quotes after saying he didn't really wish him bad, and it was sort of an interesting take on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole thing is, it's still, to just operate solely because he seemed to just want to have this great lifestyle.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
He wasn't spending the money on an addiction, or he wasn't spending the money on, didn't owe money to criminals or something like that he was forced to take desperate measures. I mean, he really seemed to have taken these measures just to live a lifestyle. But just remind us, like, what he was claiming, what was he telling these people? Like, this is cancer. And that, like, nearly everybody in Ireland will have been affected by cancer. I think they say that. And most people will know at the very least somebody that they've been close to died for cancer.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's an incredible sort of leap to take.
Yeah, well, I think Noel Tynan, that's his name. He's the owner of the Celt pub on Talbot Street, and he was one of the victims, and he told how it was kind of he played the long game. So he kind of approached him and told him about this story about how he had cancer and he had to go to America for treatment. But it wasn't really for a couple of years before he actually asked him for money. So that's, I think, kind of got people in as well because they thought it was genuine. So he essentially was telling people this story. And we had a story before about how he had, the Gardaí told one of the other victims that he had templates. So templates for charities, templates for businesses, basically looking for fundraising, and it was to go and get this treatment. And at one point, as we all know, that famous picture where he's apparently lying in a hospital bed with a drip, but it really was a phone charger up his nose. So this was going on for years, and he'd be like approaching people. One woman told how she was out with friends and he approached them, and it was just all this kind of thing about how he was really struggling. And in the end, there was over 22 victims, and they think there's actually more. And I think it was 400,000, but that's actually believed to be a small fraction of what actually took place. But this went all over Ireland. There's meant to be people that he was approaching in the north. A lot of GAA fans, people in GAA circles. There was a former hurlers approached as well.
Yeah.
So it really did just kind of get a life of his own. But yeah, that was essentially it, that he told them that he needed. I think at one point he gave people letters from hospitals and stuff where he'd gone to St. James's for treatments. Really sort of elaborate in one way, but also sort of like, I think once you kind of looked at it a little bit, kind of fell down as well, like the photo being one example of just something silly.
Yeah. So look, that was one badly behaving guy. I mean, we have a lot of murder trials. There's actually, I think in the last 2 or 3 days, we've had 4 or 5 people convicted of murder or unlawful deaths.
Yeah.
And a lot of these cases don't attract a lot of interest for various different reasons. But there was one case that was covered almost daily by Eamon Dillon.
Yeah.
That comes in there just as it comes in at number 6, but since we've merged 2 Conor McGregor stories, it is, let's say it's number 5. It's the Richard Satchwell murder trial, and it's day number 7. I don't know exactly why. Well, I think we can see why it was. It was where a specialist, Richard Satchwell, obviously went on trial for the murder of his wife, and we had details about how a dog found her remains under the staircase. Why was there so much interest in that Richard Satchwell trial?
I think it was just, well, first of all, I think it was that, like, the headlines that, basically they found his wife's body under the stairs where he'd been living for 6 years. But it was also, I think, the bizarre nature of their relationship. They were a little bit, on the outside of a life in terms of that they went to car boot sales. They seemed to have be very insular couple. And I suppose it was just all of the interviews that he gave as well. And like he kind of, his how he looks as well, in terms of like people were just sort of very taken by this massively bizarre story and how this man was giving these really like heart-wrenching interviews. Now,
were they heart-wrenching?
Well, they were. People always suspected him, but the fact that you think like this guy,
I would say that the interest came because they weren't heart-wrenching. They actually. Well, I know. I agree. I know. Understand what you mean.
He was
like
trying
the word,
to get that across.
Yes,
You almost think like if this guy, because there was always the rumors, and like in a lot of cases they do look to the spouse first, but like there was a lot of rumors, and people were thinking, God, if this guy is guilty, this is like one of the most shocking things, because he was literally like doing silly things, like this is where like this was what was he talking about? Different things like
But he was sort of saying, he would sort of be blaming her and saying, I mean, one of the things I remember him saying was, when I find her, I'm going to be really, really angry at her at running away and leaving loads of trouble. And he was also doing interviews suggesting she was violent and
and I think
really,
he went to a woods one time and was doing interviews and saying like, this could be where she is and all of this kind of stuff. And the whole time, I think that's what like really attracted the attention. The whole time she was under the stairs, and also just the fact that the Gardaí had originally, so she went missing in March. Was it 2017, and then he didn't actually officially report her missing until the May. Did loads of interviews, and then it wasn't actually until they went back. I think they had seen, so he had changed the colour of the around the stairs. And it wasn't until they went back in 2023 with a cadaver dog, and the cadaver dog found her remains.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually quite like there was certainly questions about how this happened. Not what happened, but how he was able to get away with it for so long.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But there was a new superintendent came in, and she really focused in on the fact that they had CCTV, and that they nobody they were able to, I suppose, get a warrant on the basis that the body might be there, and it was that bit was good work. But the fact is that people have been brought into the house.
Should have been found sooner, I suppose, is the question.
Should have been found sooner.
Yeah.
Now there was a very human story at the end of it all, because Richard Satchwell, in his statements, ultimately, while he denied everything and denied it for a long, long time, once the body was found, he effectively admitted killing her, but gave this very implausible statement about how, she had attacked him, basically. He'd been a long-term victim of domestic violence. And then a sort of garbled story about how she'd been attacking him and he'd somehow taken off his belt.
Held her off
with his belt. I mean, it was all, sorry, not maybe not a belt, was it
a dressing gown belt?
Dressing gown belt, yeah. And, just bizarre sort of things, and that she died accidentally and he'd panicked and ultimately encased her in concrete quite poorly.
Yeah, and I think one of, like, when you're asking why it was, a very enthralling case, like, there's some of the bizarre elements. One of the most bizarre bits of it was that it was heard in the trial how he stored her body in a chest freezer before he buried it, but then he later tried to give that chest freezer, he put it on Done Deal, and then he tried to give it to Tina's niece.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's just
and
really shocking.
he slaughtered her character, and of course pled not guilty. So